happy and hip students, and welcome to another episode in the Class Clown series, edition IELTS. At the back of the camera, you may have heard him just now. It's Sina, our producer.
Hello.
I am your host, Sarah, and joining us is Sam from Fast Track ESL.
What's up?
Welcome again.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Okay, so we're doing another flipped interview.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
I bet you're ready, right?
I'm always ready.
All right.
Some might say I was born ready.
Ooh, okay. Let's put that to the test.
Literally.
Right. So, in this first part, I'd like to ask you a few questions about yourself.
Okay.
Let's talk about animals.
Okay. I can be an animal.
I think an examiner is not supposed to say it that way. But let's talk about animals. Are there a lot of animals here in Toronto?
Sorry, Mr. Examiner.
Action.
Yes, and action. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Of course. Are there a lot of animals in Toronto?
Good question. Actually, I'm a big animal lover, so I know approximately how many animals are in Toronto. There is the Toronto Zoo, so we do have some wildlife there. Well, that are in cages, so sorry, the giggles. We also do have beavers. We have some wolves. I've seen some deer in Toronto. So I think compared to other cities that you may visit, we do have quite a bit.
Okay. All right. Do you often read articles or watch shows or documentaries about wildlife?
I don't read articles about wildlife. I don't think that affects my love for animals, but documentaries, yes. I've seen quite a few interesting ones on Netflix, and I usually watch them with my father because he likes animals too.
Oh, that's nice. Now, have you ever visited a zoo or an animal park?
Yes, so as I mentioned before, there's the Toronto Zoo around East Scarborough, and I've brought students there to see like what kind of animals we have at that Toronto Zoo. And usually if I'm traveling and visiting other parts of the world, if there's a zoo nearby, I make sure I drop in and say hello to my relatives.
Okay. Now, are you interested in working with animals?
You know, if I have to be totally frank, although my name is Sarah, no. I've never wanted to be a vet or a zookeeper. I'd like to have a pet, but when it comes to the actual industry, nope. I haven't fancied a job with animals.
Okay. And have you ever owned a pet?
Personally, no, but my sister has 2 cats, and we used to have birds, and I took a lot of pleasure in feeding them, petting them, and showing them overall love.
So how come you've never owned a pet yourself if you like animals so much?
Yep, it's a good question. Well, when I was younger, my parents always told me no, so I kind of gave up after a while. And then when I moved out and I lived on my own for a while, I was always traveling, so I didn't want to leave the pets unattended.
That's a good reason.
Yes.
Okay, now in this next part, I'm going to give you a card. On this card, we have some questions. I'd like you to take a minute to think about these questions and then talk about them for 2 minutes. So I want you to describe a website which significantly helps you in your work or your field of study.
Okay.
So here you go.
Thank
you have
you.
1 minute.
Okay. Oh. I kind of almost just wrote a full sentence. I feel like I'm being judged.
I'm watching you. And that's 1 minute.
Okay. Shall I begin?
Please begin. You have 1 minute. You have 2 minutes to speak. Please continue speaking until I tell you to stop. And don't worry if I stop you.
Okay. So, a website that significantly helps me in my field of work is this YouTube channel called Class Clown Series. And anyone can find it on YouTube. Just type in Class Clown Series, and I would say that I use this quite often. Maybe in terms of watching it once a day, but using it in my lessons maybe 2 times or 3 times per week. On this channel, you can find videos about how to speak more like a native speaker, fun ways to practice your vocabulary by playing ESL games, and just knowing how to talk about topics in a very natural way. And there are a variety of topics offered on that channel from what I've seen so far. How would your work change? My job wouldn't necessarily change if this website didn't exist, but I can tell you something, it wouldn't be as fun and wouldn't give me like innovative ways to modify my lessons so that the students could learn a little more effectively and in an entertaining way. If that website didn't exist, I would want one to exist, so I would probably create a channel that is similar. So playing English games, giving English tips to students in a kind of more dynamic way, not just with a whiteboard in the background and I'm writing, because students can get that in a classroom. So why would I want to see it on YouTube is my greatest question. There are other websites that help me with my job, and they have to be, like, my requirement for using certain websites is that it is official and that things are fact-checked and that the layout is very professional. There aren't many advertisements, and you can use that website very smoothly.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Perfect. So you talked about a website, a YouTube channel that you use for your work. All right. Now I'm going to ask you a few more general questions.
Okay.
Now, why are some people addicted to the internet?
I feel like some people overuse the internet because they've just acquired a bad habit. If people are not being productive or active normally in their life and they tend to be sedentary, then it's easy to just use a mouse or use the keyboard and click through and just keep watching. It's like back in the day when we didn't have computers so handy, people would just sit and watch TV. So it can be addictive for those reasons.
I see. Now, could you imagine the world without the internet?
I can. I see fields of green, red roses too. Nature and the simpler or older way of life, I think, is totally possible. The internet obviously affords us more convenience. We can do things quicker. We can reach out to many people more easily. But can we live without it? The answer for me is yes. I'm one of those supporters of like a more simple way of life, as you can tell.
Okay. Now, what are some positive ways that people can use social media?
From what I've seen, people can use social media to support more humanitarian causes, to protect the earth, to raise awareness. For example, TED Talk recently had a very special episode on climate change. And they invited some famous artists like Prince Royce. Well, that's for the more entertainment side, but they invited people who are experts in their field to talk about climate change and why it is such a pressing issue today. So that's a good use of social media, I think.
Excellent. And how will the way people use computers be different in the future?
Let me think about that one for a second. if I had to imagine the future of how people would use computers differently, I could say that... Is it possible to say that they would continue to use it in similar ways? Just maybe the processes would be faster and the variety of options available would be faster. Kind of like Alexa. You know how we use Alexa to attach to our like smart devices around our homes? Like more things like that would happen, I believe.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You
this
are
is
welcome.
the end of the IELTS speaking test.
Clap, clap,
Wonderful.
clap. Very nice, very nice.
All right.
And scene.
And see.
Milk that cow. Okay.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I, as a native speaker, want to know if I'm getting better.
I thought you were going to say, I as a native speaker want to know, what am I doing here?
Oh, get me out of here.
Okay, so starting with part one, I know that we struggled to maintain our composure,
Yes.
and that is something that might happen to anyone,
Yeah.
Especially
the
class
test.
clowns.
Yes.
especially the class clowns out there.
Yep.
Right.
But how did you cope with that? What did you do as a professional actor? You probably deal with this all the time. You have to deal with this all the time.
Yeah.
What are your tricks?
Well, my personal... Actually, I've developed a skill to cut completely what was in my mind and just kind of throw it out the window. It is hard to do. It takes some skill and practice to do that. So you just simply focusing on the task at hand and maybe thinking that you can think about that later is something I like to do.
Some people think about a tragedy. I know it sounds harsh, but
yes,
like,
yes.
like personal trauma. Or
Yeah.
war
The Hindenburg.
tragedies.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well,
Oh my
there's.
God.
But then you
That
would
should
just start
help.
crying. Something neutral, I think, is
Okay.
good. You know, like
yeah,
just
I was
something-
half joking.
Yeah. And then the environment, right? Like you want to keep it professional. So
True.
as you saw, we literally just reset our expressions.
Right. Yeah. Now, one of the things I really love about Sarah's performance is her varied intonation.
Oh,
And I think, again, being an actor helps, for sure.
it
Right.
does.
But she
yeah.
never speaks in monotones. She's very expressive in her quality of voice with her intonation rising and falling, which grabs the other person's attention. I also...
Oh, sorry,
yeah,
before you move on, just a note, in the pronunciation category,
Right.
intonation is very important. So
yeah.
it also has to sound natural, right? So be careful with your word stress, right? Like if you're stressing the wrong word in the sentence, the examiner's going to know that something's up.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, the use of hand gestures. That's something I
Yes,
noticed.
yes, yes,
Sarah is
yes.
very expressive in the way she uses her hands while she's talking,
Yeah.
which really highlights what she's saying, and sometimes she uses that to emphasize certain parts of her answer, like parts that she wants to really highlight and bring to the forefront. So,
Yeah.
well done on that.
Thanks.
Now, also in terms of the vocabulary that you use, now, Sarah is an educated native speaker, which means she even uses sometimes higher level vocab, low frequency words. Like I've noticed that you have an affinity for the word gravitate, which you're
Yes.
probably going to see, sprinkled throughout these IELTS interviews.
I guess
we all
so.
have those things, and we all
Yeah.
have those words that are
That we like.
Favorites.
they are our lexical teddy bears.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Oh my
100
gosh.
points for Sam.
2,000 million points. Lexical teddy bears.
Lexical teddy
my
bears.
goodness.
That's adorable.
All right, you know who to reference. All right. So we have words like you use the word sedentary,
Yes.
which is a great word. But what the examiner really likes is the use of appropriate collocation. So, for example, you said acquire a bad habit.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is worth more in
Yeah.
IELTS points compared to just using a word like sedentary,
Yeah.
for instance.
In isolation.
In isolation. So try to really emphasize those collocations to boost up your score in the lexical resource category.
Right.
Wow.
Very good.
Wowie,
Tip.
wow, wow. That was good. Okay. If I may throw in a tip, and this is almost in relation to another episode that we did, using transitional phrases, introductory phrases are good for things like the writing IELTS, right? But would you recommend it to students to kind of incorporate that into their daily language?
Oh, of course, yes. So we do tend to use, native speakers tend to use these expressions to connect ideas together, transition phrases like as I was saying, right? As you already know, and words like that. So, oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And it can help in both areas, right? It helps your writing to practice speaking it, and then it helps your speaking to practice writing it. Right.
But you should also read the room, right?
Yeah.
Is it your friend you're talking to? Is it your professor? Is it your colleague, right? Which one is more appropriate in your daily language? Is it however or but?
I know.
What I mean?
Yep.
Right.
All right. So
Beautiful.
all with a grain of salt, my friends. And we end this episode. Thank you for joining us. Oh, who's Osh? I'm thinking of those lexical teddy bears. I'm all cozy inside. Okay, so if during this episode you saw a word you didn't know or you heard, well, that's for closed captions. If you heard a word you didn't know, closed captions will help you.
CC.
If you saw the word, look to the descriptions box below for the pronunciation and definition. And if you haven't subscribed yet, by the way, please do that too.
All right. Good luck with the test, people.
Yes.
Happy learning.
Happy learning.
Happy learning.